I'm not going to run away from the questions. Have I lied? I would say.
In your line of duty, this is.
In my line of duty, I would say I have not. Because I took over as a military spokesman recently, and I have had all the figures laid out on the table. Take a part of that? Okay. The figures were already laid out as you initiated the question. The figures have already been counted. So they are all clear. So there is no reason to lie. We talk about facts and figures that are recorded, documented, and there is no lie in it. Of course, there are differences. The cage might leave the numbers at 40,000, and the Government Census and Statistics Department has laid the line at total war-related deaths to 7,768, if I remember right. I have to quote, if you want, I can get the exact figure, but something over 7,000. And UN internal country report has placed it at 7,721. So likewise, the figures are all available. There is no reason to lie.
During the 5 years, I have made one mistake, which I genuinely thought was the case, and I'll explain why I did that. But I think, well enough, Savitra, I don't lie. I was the first person in England who actually said that I thought the figure of civilian casualties was between 5 to 7. I was attacked by both sides after that. And the then Attorney General said, why did you say that? And I said, because I think it's true. And then he pointed to me, and I appreciate that. He said, they will make use of it. And so it did. Because when I was on hard talk, and this is why most Sri Lankans do, because you admit there were casualties. I think not a question of admitting. Any idiot knows that in a war, especially when you have human beings, there will be civilian casualties. If you're asking me whether there's agency involved, the answer is I think not. But there were civilian casualties, I said it then, and I'm certainly, but the figures now seem to justify what I said then. The census figures which I have before me here, and I have checked this with the ICRC, which said they come very close to their figures. These are the lists of the so-called disappeared. And I think it's a very interesting statistic that I'm sorry to say government has not actually argued about carefully. You have to be a bit sharper in your approaches and not be blanket. Let me look at the number of disappeared in that period in 2009. It is divided by age group, which I think is particularly pertinent. Less than 10 to 73. 10 to 19, 699, 20 to 29, 1,085, 30 to 39, 344, and then for every decade it's under 100. And again, if you look at 5 to 9, I'm sorry, that's under 10, 10 to 14, 47, 15 to 19, 652. Now to me, this is clear evidence, or there's a process of induction, that a number of the disappeared were in the combat age group. This doesn't mean they were terrorists. I've said again and again that we have to accept that many of these youngsters were dragooned into combat. And therefore we must mourn their death as much as anyone else. But having said that, I think the statistics show that it is the group that they are dragooned that died, and that when you come to either above or below, the figures are very low. And I have also told government listens to my advice, why don't you point out that every single one of the UN workers the LTTE held forcibly came out safe and sound? I checked that with the UN resident rep. He said they all came out except one person who was injured in a landmine, which is every thought of it, whether the military needed to save them. Every single one of the NGO workers who was kept there came out alive. And when I said this recently, the usual sort of, let's say, polemicists that contribute to websites said, yes, about 20. There were over 600. You guys haven't bothered to get those statistics together, which is your fault. So the induction process shows that if you look at it, many of the deaths were people who were dragooned into combat. And you ask the priest, all the priests came out safe. This US report was cited, which was a very good report, and again I made government from an answer at the time, actually has accounts of, let's say, the Tamil that said the hospital was shelled, areas where you have to argue. Unfortunately, we are caught between two stools. There are those who, what sort of say, thousands of people died, which is wrong. And then there are those, I'm afraid there are some in government, who want to say, no, it doesn't matter. These may stand in parallel. I think you have to go into this not because of the past, but because of the people who are still alive. That is why I have kept asking government to have a workshop on numbers. I actually got an collaborator from abroad, just to keep you happy. And I said we must do it because ultimately what we have to do is assuage the grief of those who are left. There are arguments, this really rather dogmatic assertion of no reconciliation without accountability. You never saw that said when the dictators of South America, who were imposed by the Americans or got rid of, they waited 20 or 30 years. You never saw that said for the Western-dominated regimes in Africa. The sole business of human rights. There are Europeans who say, the Chinese are going there, and the Africans told me, well, now at least there's competition. No one said anything when the Europeans decimated us and took everything and imposed dictators who oppressed human rights. Double standards are not acceptable, but the principles, the high standards, have right. We must live up to them, and if we stop this accusatory approach by trying to do things through working together, I think we would be able to help the people in the north who need the conflict.
I'd like to open the floor to questions, because I think we're running out of time, while Caroline does reply.
Thanks so much.
Yes, could we get the microphone to somebody? And
just a few remarks. First of all, this is not about making me happy. This is not the issue.
We always are.
Yes,
we must keep you happy.
That's a very cynical form of including me in this discussion. I was invited to participate in this discussion. I only can so with the background that I have. I try to be as honest and sound as I can, coming from the country that I come and having the expertise of 14 years of war coverage. If I may say so, I've covered for 10 years the causes of Palestinian people. I'm really the wrong German to address. If you want to ask the question about the question of yield and the consideration of the situation of the Palestinian cause, I'm really the wrong person to accuse of this.
I didn't say you were good. I said
now without asking, it's been really rude, and I address it only with the audience who cannot know this. So just, let me assume that we're on a panel with certain standards of cordiality. Second, it's really not about imposing double standards. Really not. It's really not about Sri Lanka having to address questions or accusations from outside. I'm really only trying to argue this from the people who have suffered in on all sides, on every side. And if you look at that, I think the question of why at all should it be relevant to think about an international commission. You're totally right. Of course, the question is totally reasonable to say, why should the international community get involved in this at all? Why isn't it possible to have an independent commission that's internal independent commission? I think the answer is only because this was an internal conflict. And because it's very hard to find people who are not affected by either side of the factions fighting in this conflict. So that's the only reason why an international commission might help, because they are a little bit less affected, evidently, than anybody who's local. So it's more about imposing anything, let's forget imposing anything from the West. Now, one last thing, you've mentioned other dictatorships in South America or in Africa. I agree with you. Of course, there's also the question of how did they come to terms with crimes that were committed. I also agree that the time factor is very important. This is a very soon moment after the Civil War is ended. I also know from Germany